To the sound. To the sound. To the sound.
All right, yes, I am live. And I'm going to be doing a probably not very long episode. I can't imagine it being that long, depending on how much interaction there is. But basically, I wanted to do an episode on my series for atheism to help atheists become better in their argumentation and learn about the basics of these philosophical topics. It's the only thing I talk about is basics. And so I had a vote out there that I put on my channel, and basically it got a lot of response, actually 160 something votes. But I basically want to know if people think that people understand the difference between justifications for beliefs and justifications for truth. And basically it's comparing veracity versus veridicality. Veracity of your beliefs, the justification for why you believe something, as opposed to the veridicality of the truth, if something being true. And how do we know something is true? Let me fix my camera there. So I wanted to kind of go over the difference, because when you hear atheists out there arguing something along the lines of, when a theist asks them, hey, how do you know it's true? And the answer is because it comports with reality, is not an answer. And I know Aaron Ra and a lot of atheists do that, and it's not an answer. And I'm explaining to you why it's not an answer. Because when you're asking someone about what is truth, what is belief, there's different theories in philosophy of what would be constitutive of what is true, what we mean by truth, and what we mean by a justification for beliefs that have come through some kind of reliable belief mechanism forming process. This is not the same as certainty. This is, I think, the biggest mistake people make, and they get bamboozled, so to speak, from the theist when the theist asks questions like, well, how do you know atheism is true and accurate? What's your proof that atheism is true and accurate? Or anything like that kind of nonsense. When you're asking about beliefs, you do not need certainty. You don't need to justify certainty. You don't need knowledge. You don't need to justify knowledge. What you need to justify is by what process do you use in order to come to a rationally concluded belief from some kind of what would be a reliable belief mechanism. This is where a lot of preceptors going in and going, oh, well, you're assuming it's reliable, blah, blah, blah. If you go read Linda Zagajewski's arguments against reliabilism, she gets into detail about why it's nice to have reliable thought processes, but the reality is a cup of coffee made by a reliable espresso machine as opposed to an unreliable one still is a good cup of coffee, or not. I mean, it's just you want to at least have some kind of truth understanding, cognitive ability to come to a conclusion about why you believe a particular proposition is true. Could it be wrong? Sure, but the way you got there is what matters. Now, the question as far as what do we know by the veridicality, the truth, is when somebody says, well, it comports with reality, what they mean by this is they're referring to what's called the correspondence theory of truth. And that particular theory has the idea that if there's some kind of truth maker that exists, some material fact of the universe, a metaphysical, logical, ontological, something about the universe that exists that makes a proposition true, called a truth maker. And so when they say what is true, and they argue, well, true is what comports with reality, what they're really saying is there's something about the state of affairs of our reality that we're going to call true given these conditions. Okay? That's how to determine veridicality. But the question that people are asking is, well, why do you believe that truth? Why do you believe that to be true? Which is a completely different question. Those go to epistemic justification theories. So there's many different ways of people can determine truth. There's the correspondence theory of truth. There's the deflationary theory of truth. There's semantic theories of truth, and semantic theory of truth comes to us as what is being related by the particular language and grammar structure of the sentence that makes that particular proposition true. Pragmatic theory of truth. It's useful. It has utility. We consider it to be true. Consensus theory of truth, which a lot of people say, well, that's appeal to popularity. No, it's not. What it means is that we recognize that we have a body of experts in a particular field, and if the body of experts have a consilience of ideas that they form to believe that a particular thing is the case, then we consider that true in society. And so that's not appealing to popularity. What it's appealing to is expertise on a particular topic that none of us have all expertise in. So the theory of truth for some kind of consilience or agreement is just how science functions, right? Because we defer to the scientists on many different things. And so we'll say something is scientifically true because the experts agree with it. And it could obviously, most of the time obviously be demonstrated by science. But we defer to the consensus theory of truth quite often. And that's not fallacious. So this is what we mean by how do you know something's true? Okay. Well, that's a different question than what is being true. So when somebody's asked what is true, you can defer to consensus theory, which is perfectly fine for science and things of that nature, philosophy. Correspondence theory is truth. There's some truth maker that makes the statement true. Theories of truth that have truth conditionals that make something true. Or a deflationary theory, which is something's true by the very nature of it being stated as a proposition. Snow is white is the same thing as saying it is true that snow is white. They're the same equivalent statement. If I say it is true that snow is white, in deflationary theory of truth, it's just saying snow is white, which also has what's called asymptotic force, meaning that you're stating that this is the case of the affairs of the universe. You're stating it that snow is white. Now, some people can say, well, I'm not making a claim on that, and there's different ways of getting around there. You can say something without making a claim if you defer to other theories like fictionism, instrumentalism, speech act theory, and things of that nature, but that's not what we're getting into here. But the question on why you particularly believe something is your epistemic justifications. And these are more along the lines of foundationalism, coherentism, the foundations for your belief. And in a foundationalist approach, you have these properly basic beliefs that you start off with, and then from there you can inferentially, other beliefs. And correspondence theory, coherentism is basically you have this web of belief, and as new beliefs come in and you have belief revisionism, you snip out the false beliefs and you bring in newer beliefs that correspond with your other beliefs. And I think that humans rely on both, a bit of both. I don't exclude coherentism from foundationalism, and I think they're perfectly fine to be appealed to differently in different situations. But what they're really asking, and this is the core of this particular video, is what is it that by what process did you get to this belief? That's what we mean by veracity of the belief. And there's a theory called causal theory that if I look at something, like I'm looking outside and I see a tree, there's a causation between that tree and my mind and the retina and the eye that it's giving me that sense perception. There's a causal connection between what I'm viewing and my sense data, my vision, and my belief formation that I'm seeing a tree. And if you have a reliable mechanism, biological mechanism, in this case, the eye, that we assume is giving us some degree of correctness of truth. And even if you deny direct realism or naive realism, which I do, I don't think we ever directly see reality. I think our minds are highly filtered and we're seeing a perception of reality in our mind, an idealistic almost view. I'm not an idealist, but we have this consciousness, and everything that we know about the universe is stored in that consciousness. It's all conceptual. Our mind is conceptual, but we're getting an idea what the reality is like. So, but there's a causal relationship that I see a tree, and so my sense data is telling me I see a tree. And so when somebody says, well, how do you know you're seeing a tree? Well, first you have to start with the belief, not because knowledge is a subset of belief, and say, well, the proposition there's a tree. What makes that proposition true? Well, there's a truth maker tree that makes that proposition true. Why do I believe that to be the case? Because my senses, which I'm understanding as being reliable, and yes, it's an assumption, which is perfectly fine, It's giving me that sense data. That's how you justify your beliefs. That's one way. There are many other ways. I have people in my life that I trust. Kids all the time trust their parents. And you say, well, why do you believe this? Well, because I have trusted people in my life that, I believe are telling me the truth. That's a way to justify it. Doesn't mean it gives you correctness. It doesn't give you certainty. It doesn't ensure the truthfulness of the proposition. What it does is it gives you a way of justifying it. And we do it all the time, even in historical context. I'm going to have some coffee real quick. One sec. It's like, okay, well, how do we know history is correct? We weren't there. How do we even know that our memories are correct? Right? We assume that our memories have some kind of comporting with reality from our experiences. We also know that memories are never 100% correct. We also know there's degradation. We also know that we have false memories. We also know that we misremember things. Our brain processes things differently. Auditory things we can hear one way or another way. And so we know that the belief formation and the storage of that as memory is not perfect, but it is reliable enough that we generally get things right. And we have to function that way. If I didn't believe there was a reality to existing when I got up in the morning, I wouldn't get up. If I didn't believe gravity would still work, I wouldn't get out of bed because I'd be fearful that gravity stopped working. I have these beliefs. We all have these beliefs. And why do you believe that? Because I wake up every morning and there's priors to that. Now, there's a problem with justifying that belief. That is true. We can't assume induction to use induction as a justification for our beliefs. We can't assume induction is going to be true day to day. Hume's problem of induction. I mean, we have to assume we can't use induction to say, hey, induction is going to continue to work because we're using the very thing we're trying to basically prove or to justify. But we still can say that we have people in our lives that we trust. And so when it comes to like historical things, well, okay, what would we expect to see if the historical accuracy was correct? If the Civil War really happened in this geological location or geographic location, what would we expect to find? We find muskets. We find, bodies. We find clothing of that particular period. We have writings for that particular period. We have correspondence with that particular period. We have an historical counting of that particular period. Okay, by that justifies my belief that the historical content is correct. Now, it's a completely different question to say, well, how do you know this? Then you're requiring the similar type of justifications. The justification for knowledge and belief are pretty much, I think, pretty well indistinguishable. I really don't know just a difference from a justification of knowledge that wouldn't somehow incorporate belief, because belief is knowledge is a subset of belief. But be that as may, the way you would justify a knowledge is similar to a belief, but extra steps. Like, it has to be justified, that it has to be true. You have to believe it. But the belief formation process is going to be the same. Whether I come to a conclusion based upon a reliable belief formulating system is going to be the same whether I believe it or if I claim knowledge to it. They're going to be the same thing. So you can even apply correspondence theories of truth in that as well and say, look, how do you know the history is true? Well, we know history in certain cases is true because it corresponds to the existing facts that we have about that. It corresponds to the existing evidence that we have about that. And of course, some, precept or, apologists were like, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? And there's this inferential dilemma of justification comes out, right? But the problem is that we're only trying to justify based upon what reliable mechanism we have. Again, it's not certainty. And this is where a lot of atheists screw the pooch, because they think that the theist, and I think that the theist does do this, I think it's dishonest, but they try to convince the atheist that you have to be certain of these beliefs. Well, how do you know this? How do you know that? How do you know that? Which is the Psi 10, presuppositionist question. But the question isn't how do you really know this? The question is how do you believe this, or why do you believe this? If you want to claim knowledge, there's ways of explaining that as well. But when you're claiming there's no God as an atheist, you don't have to claim knowledge. You can, and people can say, well, I think your claim to knowledge is wrong, and I don't think people can know either way. But that's not really a necessity. It's not a necessity at all. It's going one step further that you need to go. The atheist or theist only claims a belief one way or another, and that's completely different than as far as the necessities you need to have knowledge. but it's justified very similarly. Why do you believe this? Okay, well, I believe this because I've seen evidence from that time period. I've seen Gatling guns and muskets and the clothing and the writings. Okay, that's it. I mean, what else do you need? How is that not justifying? And maybe I'm a historicist, right? Maybe I know about, or a history expert. And I'm like, look, I've studied this topic. Why do you believe this? Because it corresponds with my other web of beliefs of that particular historical period in a correspondence theory type of way. And it might even just be pragmatic as well. I mean, why do you believe Lincoln was actually shot in by Wilkes Booth in a theater? Well, because it's pragmatic to do so. If I take a history class and that's what they're teaching, then I'm going to at least believe it as far as taking the course, right? And of course it's pragmatic because it corresponds to all these other types of beliefs that we have about Lincoln, right? In that historical context. But anyways, that's how we justify these things. This is why we justify things that we believe when it comes to theology, science, history, or anything like that. But you have to keep in mind again that asking about the veridicality of the truth is not the same as asking the veracity of it and why we have a particular belief. But so if Flamo says that would make all truth an opinion, all of us have opinions. The difference is between a mere opinion and an opinion. And there's also opinions you have to be right on. So opinion, just saying that something's opinion is just empty rhetoric. My opinion is X equals X, but can I be wrong on that? No. It's certainty. It's a law of identity. If all of X equals X is an indisputable classical logic fact of the universe that is true in all possible worlds. It is literally knowledge. It is literally certainty. There's nothing I cannot be wrong on that. And you then can go the next step and say, well, what about epistemic certainty? Some demon messing with you. And of course you can get into this what's called radical skepticism, which I find to be philosophically interesting, but of no practical use. Again, I do tend to pragmatism in that regard. The pragmatic approach would be that we don't have to have certainty. We have to be able to use this in our daily lives to function. We don't have to have certainty of science to see that it works. We don't have to have certainty of atomic theory to know that nuclear reactors work. We don't have to have certainty of germ theory to know that if you sneeze on somebody, that person might get sick because of the biologics that you're contaminating them with. Nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have this epistemic certainty or even any kind of certainty to have a rational belief. You just have to be able to explain what process you came to concluding that belief from. So if somebody says, why do you believe this? And I said, well, I believe this because, a talking snake told me this. You're going to have to question the fundamentals of your understanding of biology. And you're going to have to question, is that an adequate explanation for your belief? And of course, I think no. I mean, if somebody's hallucinating, if somebody's having auditory hypnagogic hallucinations or something like that, then you're not having a reliable belief formation process. But literally, I hate to say by definition, but in this case, it kind of is true. If you are experiencing something that isn't true in reality, if you're experiencing some kind of auditory or hallucination, it is delusional, for you to accept that, contrary to what we know about life. And so I think that if somebody said, look, yeah, I walked up to a rattlesnake and it started talking to me, I'm going to think they're tripping on acid. Why? Because my beliefs are in that web of correspondence that I know people can hallucinate. I know people have never talked to snakes. And I am going to claim that's knowledge, but just say belief. But I believe people have never talked to snakes. I've never gone around and seen a snake. One sec. Okay. So that. Like I said, I've never seen a snake. So it does correspond to my other beliefs. But anyways, that's really what I really want to talk about. And it's not a feeling, right? It's not a feeling. I have sense data, and this is why I believe this to be the case. And what does it make something true? Well, because this is the truth maker that makes it true. It's not just a mere opinion, right? I mean, if you want to distill everything down to a mere opinion, then why are we having these discussions? There are facts of the matters to be had. If you deny there's facts of the matter, you're never going to function. Is it just your opinion that gravity keeps you to the earth? Is it just opinion that there's a reality out there? Now, granted, you could argue it's a faith-based position that reality is out there, and that's actually fair. It's called a faith-based commitment. But you still have to treat it as if it does. There's a pragmatic approach to it. Even if you cannot justify it by induction, you still have to assume there is something there to even assume something about. That's not just opinion. That's pretty well a fact because of Hume's problem of induction. So saying something is just an opinion, it's just an empty rhetoric approach. It doesn't get you anywhere because everybody has opinions. But again, there's different degrees of opinions. There's mere opinions that are just based upon nothing, a guess. There's educated opinions. There's correct opinions. There's opinions you cannot be wrong about. Like, again, I cannot be wrong about something doing the thinking here. Maybe you want to argue identity or I. Okay, that's fair because it is circular to assume I before you even reason about I. But the fact of the matter is something is doing the reasoning. Whether it's me or whatever the identity is, the fact is something's doing the reasoning. I cannot be wrong about that. I mean, it's a contradiction to say that I'm wrong about reasoning when I'm reasoning to reason that, right? So, yeah, I mean, you just don't want to distill yourself to that point where you're just going radical skepticism to have these conversations. This is what I'm saying. Just stick with beliefs. The atheist, to believe there is no God, just has to point out that he's come to the conclusion, or she has come to the conclusion that they have a reliable belief mechanism, and they've looked at the data, and they believe they have a reasonable belief that the proposition of theism is false and that God does not exist. And they can ask what the truth makers are, and the truth makers, again, are historical context. The truth makers could be appeal to the experts in science and then say, okay, well, I think science more adequately explains observations, and then appeal to theoretical virtues and an oppie approach. But that's up to the individual atheist about whether they want to actually try to argue that their belief is rationally came by. You don't have to prove that it's true. You don't even have to really explain much about why it's true. It's really about your belief. And I think that some theists, like Shock of God, tries to dishonestly conflate the justification for belief as opposed to the determining of what we consider to be true. And again, it doesn't have to be certain. Even in science, it's nothing certain, right? They're tentative, provisional beliefs. Why should you have any other methodology? Your beliefs are provisional. They are changed when new information is acquired. And that's all I really wanted to say. So I'm going to leave this short and sweet. I want to appreciate the people that have voted. I look forward to any kind of critique of this particular video. I want to thank Autistic Show for bopping by and Kimomaki for my mods. And please support the channel. Become a member if you like. If you like these types of, shooting from the hip type of philosophy hangouts, or this isn't even a hangout, but just me talking about these particular topics, then yeah, try to support the channel. I do appreciate it. It really does help. But more importantly, just watch, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And I look forward to what you guys think. So with that, thank you for watching another Learning About Atheism video. Peace.